This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Are we all good recording? Okay. Let's start the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Star Wars Celebration podcast stage. It's great to see all of you. You are in the Holonet News stage room. This is the new name, I guess, for the podcast stage. My name is Dan Zer. I am the host and co-creator of Coffee with Kenobi. With me is my co-host for today, New York Times bestselling author Adam Christopher.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yes, this is really great. Getting to be here with all of you is wonderful because, I mean, look at how Star Wars travels, right? Who came the farthest away, do you think? Any guesses? Who feels like, I think I flew the farthest? Where from? New York? That's pretty far. Anybody else? LA? Anybody else? I'm from Chicago, but I think LA's quite a bit farther away. How's the jet lag doing for you? It's okay. Good. If I hear snoring, I'll know where it's coming from. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign. All right, well, very good. Well, today on the show, if you're a listener of Coffee with Kenobi, you know we are a family-friendly, spoiler-free podcast. We want to make you think, we want to make you laugh, and we just want you to feel like you've got coffee or tea and you're having some Star Wars conversation with your friends. Which is perfect because Adam and I, he was on the show last summer to promote your book, Shadow of the Sith. Best-selling book right there. Who's read Shadow of the Sith? Who is going to read Shadow of the Sith? There you go. You've got this to look forward to. Now you've got some background with this amazing book that Adam was a part of. But before we get to that, our main topic for the show is going to be top 5 scenes that we love from Return of the Jedi. And we picked that because I feel like that's a pretty universal thing. For how many people is Return of the Jedi your favorite original trilogy film? All right. How many people would say The Empire Strikes Back is their favorite film? How many would say Star Wars? See, I feel like if you're like of our age, it's Empire Strikes Back, right? But Return of the Jedi was the newest one for a long, long time, and that, of course, kept things going for a really long time. But let's talk about the announcements. So I know you were busy running around doing author things, so you weren't able to see some of the big stuff that happened. Was anybody else in that room that wants to come up here and share with us all the news? Come on up, buddy. No? I could tell you. Okay, so we got to see an Ahsoka trailer. While we didn't get to hear any casting stuff, we did see and hear the name Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yes, absolutely. Any Thrawn fans in here? Of course. And then so you got to see someone walking with a blue neck. So unless it was Papa Smurf, I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. So that was pretty big. Rosario Dawson did say that she hopes everyone loves it, so there will be a season 2. And then Dave was like, let's not over-promise. Let's not over-promise things like that. So who knows where that's going to go. We saw some of the directors that are coming out for the film, or the Disney Plus series Skeleton Crew, starring Jude Law as a Jedi Knight, that was a pretty big reveal. But the biggest reveal, I think, was the movies. Right? We know we're going to see 3 different timelines in the world of Star Wars, and I got the Lucasfilm announcement here for us, so we can just sort of go through them one at a time. So James Mangold, who's of course directing Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, is going to direct a film covering the first Jedi to wield the Force set 25,000 years before the films. So, Adam, initial thoughts on that?
Really amazing. The thing about Star Wars is that, we grew up with the original trilogy and then the prequels and then the sequels, and that's really only, I haven't worked it out, it's like a 50-year time period or something by the time you go back to Phantom Menace. And then now we've got the High Republic, which goes back sort of 200 years. Mm-hmm. But still, within the kind of the timeline of the Star Wars universe, that's still a very small window. So now, I know in the old EU, we went back to the old Republic, like the movie is going to be 25,000 years. It was possibly even longer than that in the EU, but in canon, it's like we haven't done that before.
Right.
So it's really exciting to be able to open up like the entire universe of Star Wars.
It opens up so many amazing possibilities. And I think he said he wanted it to be like a biblical, sort of the Ten Commandments feel to it. So the scope of that is pretty promising, quite staggering. And who knows what that's going to entail. But I just foresee sort of like a 2001 moment without monkeys, where, that moment when he first gets in tune, or she gets in tune with the Force, is going to be pretty special. So that's exciting. Plus, James Mangold is just a great director. Logan, of course, is the one that stands out to me of his work. But hopefully this new indie will be the one. And then the second one is pretty exciting, I think, to a lot of us, because Dave Filoni is finally going to direct his own Star Wars film, which is very long overdue. But this is going to be a film set in the Mandoverse, which links the current Disney Plus series together. And I feel like that's more information than we got in the actual panel, isn't it? Because it said it's 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and he's so steeped in the lore of Star Wars anyway, so he's going to have a lot of inspiration to choose from. What are your initial thoughts on that one?
Yeah, again, like I'd like to see when it's going to be set. I think it's clear, I don't know anything myself, but it's clear that they want to cover that period between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, which is sort of 35 years of storytelling. My book is in the middle of that, so I'm just kind of curious.
Yes.
Which leads into the third movie.
That's right.
Which they've announced.
That's exactly right. Yeah. All he said was that it takes place with the growth of the New Republic.
Yeah, which we've already seen in Mando TV show.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But if he's going to pull from that big pool, that would be great. But the third one is the one that everyone lost their minds. I think that's fair to say. This says it's a film featuring Rey. Daisy Ridley is back as Rey. Yes, absolutely. Rebuilding the Jedi Order 15 years after the rise of Skywalker and defending it against those who wish to tear it down.
Yeah, I'm like all for that movie. That's, I was kind of, because obviously I was outside and I was just sitting down having a cup of tea when I was like reading someone tweeting about it, and I was just like stunned.
Yes.
And I saw the kind of Star Wars tweeted the video of Daisy coming on stage.
It's electric.
It's like, for me, because Rey is such a huge part of Shadow of the Sith. Mm-hmm. And I feel through writing the book, I got such a connection with the sequel trilogy, personally,
right,
and the characters in it, that the potential for whatever comes 15 years later is amazing.
It's pretty exciting, and you've got this great canvas to pull from of all these great characters. So, and actually, let's talk about your book a little bit. Rey, of course, in your book, she's quite young.
Yeah, so, because Shadow of the Sith is set about 17 years after Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. So Rey is 6, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and we
Let's
meet...
ask the author.
Yeah, and we meet her parents, Dathan and Miramir, and that's the whole... the book is about their journey escaping from Ochi of Bestoon, mm-hmm. who has been sent by Palpatine to get the girl. And it's Luke and Lando kind of chasing Ochi, chasing the parents.
Right.
And it's kind of weird, like, the brief I got was literally that scene in The Rise of Skywalker where Rey meets Lando in the tread thing. And like he's like, oh yeah, me and Luke went on this thing and we were hunting for Ochi of Bestoon. They said, go and do that story. That was the only thing they told me to do. And it turned into this kind of big, way too long novel.
No, it's wonderful.
Well, no, I say way too long. It was supposed to be 90,000 words, and it got to 160,000 words. And I emailed my editor, and I was like, this is like longer than you're expecting, I think. And she's like, no, that's fine. You got to tell the story that you got to tell. But the weirdest thing, this is going to sound like super weird, is that obviously I studied this sequel trilogy, especially Rise of Skywalker, frame by frame at some points, to get everything I could out of it, to make sure that my story fitted with everything that we see in the sequel trilogy. Because in the sequel trilogy, there's flashbacks, and we see Rey when she's 6, and we see her parents, Dathan and Miramir, who I got to name, which is amazing. But then it was between the book came out June the 28th, and there was a week in publishing. The book comes out on a Tuesday, and then the New York Times bestseller list comes out the Wednesday after, and nobody knows what's going to happen until that day, 5 p.m. Eastern. And I was kind of going crazy because it's Star Wars, and the list doesn't matter, but part of you is well, what if it would happen? Sure. So to kind of distract myself during that week, I watched the sequel trilogy in sequence, uninterrupted, as just me watching a movie for the first time since I've done the book. And the way it changed how I see the sequel trilogy.
Wow.
And then when I got to Rise of Skywalker, and then, Miramir, Rey's mother, appears, and I was just the most electric feeling, which is it sounds weird because I wrote the book,
right.
But I hadn't had that chance to kind of step back and see the movie through new eyes,
Right.
which I think is what I hope that readers of the book get if they read the book and then go back to the sequel trilogy. Especially Rise of Skywalker, which it very closely ties into because of all this backstory and flashbacks we get with Rey.
Right.
And I got to do things like name her parents, Dathan and Miramir, which is weird. So Jodie Comer is one of my favourite actresses. She's in Killing Eve as I'm not going to pronounce her name in French. Villanelle.
Yes.
And when I saw The Rise of Skywalker in the movies, this is long before I was going to do the book, and she appears suddenly in these flashbacks as her mother, and I'm oh my goodness, it's Jodie Comer. Billy Howell plays Dathan. We're all about Jodie Comer. So then to get the opportunity to actually write her character as a character, it's kind of this weird thing in Star Wars where we have all these, the great thing about Star Wars for me when I was watching it growing up, Empire Strikes Back, like you say, with exactly the right age where that's the best movie, is because you had all these characters in the background, like the bounty hunters, where we had nothing. We had a name and they're on screen for 5 seconds, and then if we're lucky we had the action figures. So what I was doing when I was kind of 6 or 7 or 8 is I loved Empire Strikes Back because I could take the action figures of the bounty hunters and I could create their story, which you don't see in the movie, with all the toys. So in a way, writing Star Wars as a book is kind of like that, where we've got Dathan and Miramir, who you see on screen for 10 seconds, and she has 2 lines, I think. So they existed, but they didn't exist.
Right.
They were established and they were real, but for a long time after the movie, there's this kind of joke, it's there's even a trading card, and it was Rey's mother. No name or anything.
Right.
They were so kind of blank slates.
Was that pressure for you? I mean, just hearing you talk about it, and we talked about it before, but hearing you, good to see you in person, by the way. Yeah.
What's that?
It's good to see you in person, because we talk all the time, and of course he lives a little far from Chicago, so we don't always hang out as much as we would like. But that has to be wonderful and daunting and just must give you an incredible feeling. Tell us what that's like.
Yeah, it's an interesting feeling knowing that you're doing something which counts.
Right.
I've written, so before Star Wars, I wrote a Stranger Things novel, which was Chief Hopper's New York backstory. I've written for Dishonored, which is the video game series. And I wrote 2 books about Elementary, which is that modern-day Sherlock Holmes with Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu. So I wasn't new to tie-in books.
Right.
And I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. So, growing up I read Doctor Who books. And that's kind of what I always wanted to do. So to finally do it, you just you have to just set aside any fanish tendencies because you'd just panic. It's okay, here's a completely blank slate. I knew from the start that Dathan and Miramir were the main characters of the book, and they don't even have names. So I've got to name them. Like it wasn't even just a question. It's like, well, I've got to give them names.
See, that's like when I make a Dungeons and Dragons character, it's really hard to come up with a name. I probably spend more time on that than anything, so that must have been really daunting.
Yeah, it's funny because like Dathan was a friend from school who I lost contact with. Now, if he's still out there somewhere, I don't know. But
royalty
yeah,
check?
it's like he's in Star Wars now.
Yeah.
And I kind of sometimes I like late at night thinking, I hope he likes Star Wars. Like, you know, wherever he is.
If I stop talking to you, will you name a character after me?
Yeah, I could do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then Miramir was just like, I wanted a kind of fantasy name.
Yes.
Like a kind of Lord of the Ringsy.
I was going to say, it has that sort of Tolkien
mystical
elf.
Yeah, and like the planet that she comes from, Hypercarn, which appears in the book, is this kind of twilight forest. Where I can just kind of it's kind of elven and blue and gold and that kind of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's something I think that people are just interested in, because when you know you've got the keys to this incredible kingdom, what a great thing to be able to do. I love that. All right, so let's talk Return of the Jedi, because that is the topic. We're going to we like to do top fives on Coffee with Kenobi, whether you join me live on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, which of course is much different. It's 6 hours behind where we are now. Or listen to the show weekly. In May, it will be 10 years of Coffee with Kenobi, which is pretty great. And my dear friend Mark helped me to be aware of the fact that Coffee with Kenobi has been on the podcast stage more than any other Star Wars podcast. So that's pretty cool. Round of applause. I need a light that says, yay. Yeah. So that's really, really fun. So all right, let's do this. We'll have you start first. I put my list in order from least to best. But you can just pretend. Just wing it.
There's 5 moments
Okay.
from Return of the Jedi.
All right. Well, what is your number 5?
Number 5. This is not a numerical order.
That's okay. I won't know the difference.
Return of the Jedi was the first Star Wars movie that I remember going to the movies to see in New Zealand. And I think it was actually 84, because films in those days came out at weird times in different parts of the world. The bit that struck me at that age was Luke when he's about to be pushed into the Sarlacc pit, and he does the whole salute, and then R2-D2 does the thing, and then it all kicks off. You knew something was going to happen. It's kind of weird talking about it. It's 40 years old,
so
and we've seen it so many times. But if you can just imagine the first time you saw it and the surprise, like what is going to happen. And then I watched it the other day, and it's funny. It's quite slow because it's not a movie, and like he goes on to the end of the thing, and then R2 comes out, and it's like, and then he does the somersault and waits for the lightsaber, and like he's waiting for quite a long time, like because R2-D2 shoots it out, and it's like the music's going, it's all exciting, and he's just waiting. I think he'd probably cut it a bit differently these days,
Right.
but that's just the style.
Yeah.
And then he kind of kicks ass.
And that's when you see that green lightsaber for the first time. I remember my 5 is sort of tied into that. It was the lead up to Return of the Jedi. So I was at school, and my friend opened up his book bag, and he pulled out a Luke Skywalker wearing all black. And I said, "What is that?" Like I have goosebumps just thinking about it. And he said, "This is the new Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi." And I see the Kenner thing on the bottom, and so, I said, "Can I look at it?" Sure. So first thing I do, flip it over to the back, and you see all these characters that you've never seen before. There's some pig guy that's green. Looks like a red stormtrooper wearing a robe. And you're thinking, what are these things? They look amazing. And he said, "Well, I found it at Toys R Us." So as soon as my mom picked me up from school, what do you think I said? Yeah, well, I did it way more convincing than that. I wanted to get to Toys R Us. And so she took me there, and there was this big wall. It used to be like there would be massive walls, sort of like at Forbidden Planet, right? There's this huge wall of action figures, and you don't know what any of them are related to, but you saw Luke Skywalker, and he had a big Jedi robe and a green lightsaber that wasn't a telescoping lightsaber, which I guess the Bespin Luke wasn't like that either. But still, all those possibilities. And when we went to the theater, we saw it the first day, and my mom got us out of school to see it the first day. And I was sitting in this lawn chair. We're all sitting in this big line back before kids a long time ago at a movie theater far, far away. You couldn't order your tickets online. You had to actually wait in line. And we were sitting there, and somebody drove by, and they rolled down the window, and they yelled at us, "Hey, space cadets." And I said to my mom, "What does that mean?" She said, "Well, they're just trying to be funny because we like this show." I'm like, all right, whatever. So we walk in, and the lights dim, and every time a new character was introduced, massive applause. Every time. You see that, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, in the opening scroll, everyone claps. The Imperial shuttle shows up, Darth Vader comes down, everyone erupts. It was very much like being in a play or like watching a live Saturday Night Live or something. And every time someone walks out, people applaud it. And I just remember thinking, this is special. And here we are talking about it 40 years later, and it just, when I'm talking about it now, I can just see the smiles on your faces, and it's just a great memory.
Amazing. Yeah. It's funny, I don't remember, I say it's the first movie that I remember seeing in the movies, but I don't remember being in the theatre. Yeah. What I remember is I saw it with my best friend from school, and like on the walk back with my parents, the walk back from the theatre to the car park, we were kind of doing a lightsaber duel. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's those memories that, these, like even now, like everything you're going to experience this weekend, those will be memories you're going to attach to different things and different characters and stuff like that. So what's your number 4? If you had a list.
Well, what I like actually is, maybe this is number 1. Or maybe, like, my stuff is not in numerical order, so we can do that later. But
sure,
like,
sure.
But,
what's the next one, Adam?
The next one is when Darth Vader reads that Luke has a sister. That is so well done, and it's so creepy because you've got Luke underneath. He's hiding because the duel have stopped. He's like in the shadows underneath the kind of gantry, and Vader's like looking. And the way that James Earl Jones pronounces that line is so like horror movie creepy.
Can you hear it? Can you try it? You got a good mic.
I'm not doing this on a podcast.
Sister.
But, yeah, it's like the way he's like sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, and Luke is obviously he's falling apart, and ultimately that's what like Vader kind of brings about his own destruction, because that's the point that tips Luke over.
Yeah. Family.
Where he's like, if you won't join me, maybe she will, and he comes out. And there's also the best of John. I think John Williams' score for that final fight is his best piece of music that he ever did.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's kind of weird. I don't know. There's various versions of the Return of the Jedi soundtrack album. There's like a long extended version of the album, and that piece of music is actually like in the middle of something, in the middle of a big suite. I've got like the record of it, and I always kind of fast forward to that point when I'm doing something, writing an epic scene.
That's awesome. All right, well that's a good one. That's a great one. All right, but that's not your number 1.
Well, yeah, let's see.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
KiwiCo is defining the future of play by making it engaging, enriching, and seriously fun. They create super cool hands-on projects designed to create a lifelong love for learning among kids. Each month, KiwiCo delivers crates packed with fun and sparks creativity with kid-friendly topics and activities. The crates cover a ton of interesting topics and provide real, hands-on skills for kids to explore. From engineering robots to learning about the science of cooking, there's something for every kid. Discover subscription lines for kids of all ages, ranging from infants and preschoolers to teens and beyond. The first one we just received was the Tinker Crate Domino Machine. It's a make-it-yourself domino machine, and it's incredible. It's like a small little robot device that you build. You assemble it, you put the walls up, you hook up the wiring, and then you load it up with dominoes, and you turn it on, and you just watch it. It moves on its own and sets up the dominoes perfectly, and any color organization that you want, which we had a lot of fun with that, sort of randomizing them. And then once you're done, you turn off the machine, move it out of the way, and then boom, you've got your dominoes set up, and you just knock them over. And it does it perfectly. We tried a bunch of different ways and angles and positions to see if it would ever not knock them all down, but it always did. And this was not Mason's first time with KiwiCo, but it was his first one since COVID, actually, now that I think about it. And it was challenging, but very, very good. It kept him engaged for several hours, building it and playing with it. And he told me when he was done, he said, Dad, I'm going to keep this forever. Seriously, it was cool. And I kept saying to him, my wife did too, this is like you're practicing to be an engineer, or you're just building. You're using your brain as creative. Plus, they get to play with it. And I liked watching him do it. It was really pretty cool. And there's one that is coming next that I can't wait to explore, which is where he's going to build his own little rocket ship. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like, but I do know if it's anything like this domino machine, it's going to be awesome. As a parent, it can be hard to find creative ways to keep your children busy, challenged, and off their screens. KiwiCo does all that legwork for you so you can spend quality time tackling projects together like I just mentioned. There's something for kids of all ages. There's actually no commitment, so you can pause or cancel anytime that you want. Your child can get super cool, hands-on science, art, and geography projects delivered to their door every month. They'll be so excited to see these arrive in the mail. The day the box arrives will be their favorite day of the month. You'll be surprised at how high quality these materials are too. These are real engineering, science, and art projects for children. It's STEM. It's amazing. And I can't wait to hear what you think and what projects you are going to do. Redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build creative, confidence, and problem-solving skills with KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line at kiwico.com/CWK. That's 50% off your first month at kiwico.com/CWK. So the next one on my list, I made a huge list of like different ideas of things. I want to talk about the ending of Return of the Jedi and the moment when Vader gets redeemed, right? And for a long time, the mythology of recollecting that moment in the story was really beautiful because you had, Vader turning from evil and saving his son, and what that means and what all those years of the story would have piled up. But for me, when I was a kid and I saw it, I didn't think any of that. I thought, what is going on? Why is Darth Vader an old bald guy? What? And I was just so struck by that because I just didn't know how to process it. Because when you hear James Earl Jones, or you see the menace, the big cloaked menace enveloped in black that is Darth Vader, you just don't expect that, right? But now looking back at it as an adult, I love it because there's just so much power in, as we know, taking care of your mental health is so incredibly paramount, right? Anakin didn't take care of his mental health. I don't think that's a Star Wars Celebration announcement by any stretch of the imagination. But that repressed anger, it's almost like the Hulk in a way.
Yeah.
But much longer stasis, where he doesn't deal with what's happening, and his outward matches the interior anger and hate that he has. And I just think that's just that's why Darth Vader is arguably my favorite Star Wars character. Sometimes I let Yoda sneak in, sometimes Ahsoka. It just kind of depends. But Vader, I think, is the most Shakespearean and the most complex. And looking at that through that lens now makes me appreciate all the more.
Yeah, and in fact, probably one of my number 3 moment, if you like, is when Luke sees the Force ghosts of Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin. Now, in the original version of the movie, it's Sebastian, is it Shaw or Stan? Sebastian, one of them is in Marvel movies and one was in Star Wars. Yeah, one of those.
Sure.
And I remember when the remastered versions came out, and I was kind of disappointed that they changed it to Hayden Christensen. Except I now understand that that's exactly the right thing that George Lucas did, because the whole point of the Jedi being able to kind of transcend death and become a Force ghost and exist within the Force is because they can let go of life and move on to a new form of existence. The Sith cannot let anything go. Like, the whole thing with the Sith is they can't let go. Shadow of the Sith is partially about Palpatine's quest for immortality.
Yes.
We get that from Revenge of the Sith when he's talking about the story of tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and we're getting some of that in the Mando TV show. The Sith can't let go, so they cannot become a Force ghost because that is completely the opposite of what a Sith is. So therefore, for Anakin to appear to Luke, it's at the point where he was still Anakin, which is when he was a young man. So to replace him is actually really perfect. I'm not going to spoil it, maybe I am, but he appears as a Force ghost to Luke in Shadow of the Sith. Again, as that kind of young man version, because that is when Anakin was at his most powerful as a good Jedi before he changed. So I've kind of now the remastered version, I've come to appreciate it.
That's, you know what, I've always kind of struggled with that narratively, so I appreciate that perspective. That's great. And
it's always unfair to Sebastian, right? Because they cut him out. He does Darth Vader with the mask off, which is a huge moment, and then they take him out. But unfortunately, it's necessary. Although in Shadow of the Sith, I kind of have both versions of Anakin. I kind of redeem Sebastian in a tiny way, which I thought was fun to do.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to give that love to both aspects of it. I love that. All right, so my next one is not quite as beautiful or pronounced. It's just speeder bikes. That's it. I mean, when you first see speeder bikes and you hear them, in 1983, that was cutting edge. And it absolutely blew you away. And then it was so thrilling. And then there was a great Atari cabinet video game where one of the things you got to do was you got to ride on a speeder bike and weave in and out of trees, and invariably what would happen that would smash into you or something like that. But the wonder of that, and seeing Luke jump on one and fight that biker scout, and with his light, and he extends that lightsaber, and it's got sort of a different hum. Edinburgh gives a kind of different little ping when it turns on, you know what I mean? And there's just something so electric about that. No matter how many times I saw that movie in the theater, that was one time. Well, you never wanted to leave for anything. That's why you go to the bathroom as the credits, as the trailers start, and then you don't miss anything. But that was one sequence I thought, I can never miss this, because it was just so amazing and so adrenalized.
Yeah, that sequence, maybe that's my next one, because that is all about the crashing into the trees, right? Especially as a kid. And that Christmas, I got the speeder bike toy, and it exploded. It had a spring-loaded button at the back. You pushed it to the back, and it popped out into 3 parts, and it was spring-loaded, so they kind of flew around. So they understood exactly what that scene was about for that kind of age group.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So you got 2 left.
You do your next one.
Your next one, okay.
Yeah.
My number 4 or 2, or I lost count now, was seeing Jabba the Hutt when he first goes, oh. And they have that really soft music in the background, and he's sitting up there in all his splendor, and you see that giant fish bowl that looks like there's a frog in it, and there's Boba Fett over in the corner, and you've been hearing about, if you read the comics, there was a weird drawing version art of Jabba, but it of course wasn't the Jabba, it wasn't the space slug. And it certainly wasn't the actor that portrayed him that later became CGI'd over for the special editions in 1997. But seeing Jabba the Hutt, and then all my stuff is tied into Kenner Toys, I think. But you had that Jabba toy, and you would wiggle his head, and his tail would go when you turn his head. And he came with a little dungeon that you could open up, although it was on his big throne, and that was where you could supposedly, where the Rancor would be, although it would never fit in there.
Yeah.
But he blew us away. And then when Leia takes care of him at the end, that was one of her big hero moments in that film. So everybody gets to take out a bad guy, so to speak. And Jabba didn't seem like he could be defeated. And the threat, it's really, I can't underestimate or undersell enough that between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, those 3 years were the longest 3 years of a kid's life, because there was no internet. There was randomly Starlog magazine or different magazines that would just give you ideas and hints about what might be happening. There might be a cool set visit picture or something like that. But we had no idea, and we couldn't connect as readily as we can now because of the internet, unless you were on the Lucasfilm. What was the magazine then during Return of the Jedi? Was it just the Lucasfilm or Bantha Tracks? Yeah. I always want to say Fantha Tracks. You can probably guess why. And so we didn't know. We didn't know what to think. And every time we would go back to see Empire Strikes Back in the theaters, my little brother, who's not little anymore, he would always say, "Is this the one where they free Han Solo?" Like, no, it's the same movie. It's the same movie. It's not the one where they free Han Solo. Because Jabba was so daunting, and we were so mad at Boba Fett, and who's this Jabba guy that would take Han Solo from us? And then you finally see the splendor of him, and it's just unforgettable on the big screen like that, just larger than life, literally and figuratively.
That's interesting. You talk about how it was such a long time between Empire and Return of the Jedi. And I had the same kind of feeling, because when you go into the movie, it's been a long time for the characters as well. Like, they've been through the kind of same period of time that we have, because Lando, we learn, went in to see Jabba and never returned, and Luke has become a Jedi Knight and is dressed in black and is like completely different. So like, there's this whole period where some stuff has gone on that we haven't seen, and we're kind of catching up. So it kind of lends that, if you're the right kind of age, when we saw it at the movies, that kind of epic quality. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen.
And it just blows you away.
Yeah, completely.
All right, speaking of blowing us away, what's your number one?
Well, probably the destruction of the Death Star at the end, but specifically when the Falcon and its kind of escort ships goes into the Death Star and then emerges into the central reactor chamber. And this is, matte paintings and plate glass special effects of 1983, and it's this incredibly enormous
spectacle
room, and it's a spectacle. And the Falcon is suddenly tiny, and they blow up the Death Star. But to be able to pull that off with that level of special effects so realistically on such an epic scale, you really, outside the Death Star, there's a huge space battle going on, right? And it's much bigger than the one at the end of Star Wars, just in the sheer number of ships and the kind of the calamity of it. And then cut off from that, when the Falcon goes inside the Death Star, it's this enormous space, which is so epic. And especially, maybe this is like tied, because the moment when the Superstar Destroyer goes down into the Death Star,
the scale of that.
That is it's so epic.
Do you remember when you first saw that sequence? I think it was in the trailer, where they're in the Falcon cockpit, and you see all those TIE fighters rushing to the cockpit, and it just kind of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, the way that, and again, this is model work with stop motion and motion control cameras that were like clockwork on tracks and stuff. It's not, when you learn the behind the scenes of how they did it, it doesn't take away from the magic of the moment. It kind of almost adds to it, because when that shot, when you see all the TIE fighters breaking over the cockpit of the Falcon, is unbelievable.
Yeah, it blows you away. But speaking of blowing you away, there's only one number one for me, and you already mentioned it. There's actually a song, a title track on the Return of the Jedi soundtrack, and the song is called Return of the Jedi, and it's the sequence where Luke goes out onto that plank on the skiff, and he nods, and then he does that thing to R2-D2, and then the lightsaber extends, and it shoots out. He does his flip. I don't know how many times, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, no matter your age, where I stood on my bed, and I put on that song, and I would jump off the bed, and I lay on the ground. Of course, I didn't flip, but in my mind, I did. And you hold up, and your brother or somebody throws you a plastic lightsaber, and, oh, come on, we got to do it again. You didn't land perfectly in my hand, that kind of stuff. And it was just so, what an amazing hero moment. And the best part, similar to A New Hope, is you had to wait a long time for the payoff. When Luke finally shows up, he's very passive, almost like a pacifist. And you don't really know what's happening, but it's Return of the Jedi, not Revenge of the Jedi. But when it comes down to it, and he has to fight for his friends and for his life, he does so in such a spectacle that I think that defining moment is what I think of when I think of Return of the Jedi. And that, to me, besides in The Last Jedi, when Luke makes his appearance at the end, that's my favorite Luke Skywalker moment. It's just absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, because Luke is in control. This is the thing, the Luke Skywalker of the original trilogy is 3 different characters.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, it's like in A New Hope, he's the farm boy thrust into this amazing situation. In Empire Strikes Back, he's a rebel officer like doing his bit as a pilot as part of this whole organization. And then in Return of the Jedi, he's a Jedi Knight.
Yeah.
So there are actually 3 completely different versions of the same character.
And there's this wonderful progression of that maturity.
Yeah, exactly. And he's such a presence in Return of the Jedi. Even when you first see him, he comes into Jabba's palace. This is the whole thing with the black costume and the robe, and the way they shot it with the light and the shadow, and he's just kind of walking in. And you know, Jabba's palace is so enormous with the gate and the Gamorrean guards, and he's just kind of like just walking in on his own in the middle of this huge space. You already know that something like special has happened to him.
Right.
I mean, you know it's Luke.
Right.
It doesn't. You know, we don't find out till later that it's Luke, but like you know it's him.
It's amazing.
He's coming to like take care of business.
And he does. And he absolutely does. So, do you have any little honorable mentions you want to throw out there?
It's just a good movie, man. It's
It is.
it's such a good movie.
It is.
And it's funny you mentioned earlier talking about the action figures. You'd go to Toys R Us or the back of the packet, and you'd see all these things, and you'd cheer when they appear on the screen.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, but like you'd see the movie and still not know what some of these action figures were because
Right.
there's so many. It has the ultimate Star Wars thing, which I said earlier, of like cramming in all these characters. You know, Jabba's palace is full of aliens and different, and they've all got names and stories and action figures. Some of which you like. There's a frame of a thing, and then there's an action figure.
Yeah.
But to me, that's like the magic of Star Wars, because Star Wars, especially at that time, was all about the movies but toys. You know, you reenacted the Luke scene
Yes.
because you couldn't just like replay it. I saw the movie maybe twice, and that was probably unusual. You know, because you don't. You know, your parents have a limited interest and patience with taking you back to the movie all the time.
Yes.
You know, before VHS, before DVD, before anything, we had our memories of the movie,
Right.
and we had the toys.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this magical combination of stuff. Like, I want to watch the movie again. Like, maybe tonight I'll watch it.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah,
I think you'll love it.
yeah, it's good, right? Yeah.
All right, so let's see. We're doing pretty good. I thought we talked for about 40 minutes, and we have. So we've got a little time. There's a chair up here and a nice microphone. If you would like to come up here and ask a question about, or give your favorite Return of the Jedi moment, share some memories from the panel, whatever, this is your chance to be on a Star Wars Celebration podcast stage. So come on up. There you go. I've learned as a teacher, if you're silent for long enough, somebody will do it.
Yeah. Hi, Jonas, by the way. I'm from Norway, Trondheim. Nice to be here. One of my favorite parts of Return of the Jedi is Yubnub.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
Yubnub.
party.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
final party.
Yeah.
The song, the old school song.
Both the song and like the circumstance of why they're there, and also seeing Force ghosts of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin. I remember the first time seeing that in the basement with my cousin, and when Anakin came, we cried.
Yes.
So it was like this big moment for us who has been watching all these films and growing up with the characters as well. Seeing Anakin as Hayden Christensen, it was like a big moment for us. So yeah, that's my favorite moment from that film.
That's spectacular.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yubnub.
Thank you.
This is going to sound strange, but again, there's a version of the soundtrack for Return of the Jedi which has got Yubnub, and it's got about 5 versions of it. Because there's the one in the movie, then there's like different tracks, different vocal tracks. Like, I put that on when I'm writing like something kind of happy or like celebratory, because it's such a good
That's great.
piece of music. That's what it is. It's Yubnub.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like little tracks. I like it better than the newer song.
Well, the newer song is kind of epic, isn't it? It's kind of sweeping and
Yeah,
majestic.
it's fine,
and,
but you attach that memory, right?
It's interesting that party scene. When I wrote Shadow, one of the questions was like, how well do Luke and Lando know each other? Because although they're 2 of the main characters in Star Wars, they actually don't interact much at all. And the party at the end of Return of the Jedi is the only time in the movie they meet, and they like have a handshake, and then that's it.
Really?
Yeah. And then Empire Strikes Back, they've like one line. I mean, Lando rescues Luke from when he's dangling underneath the
Right.
Bespin, but like they don't know each other.
funny is that? Now let's watch that again. All right, anybody else like to come up and ask a question? Come on down. Or form a queue if you want. I mean, we are at a convention.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank
Hello.
you.
Yes.
This is really interesting, and it's first time at Celebration, so very pleased to be here. My name's Tom. You're talking about going to see Return of the Jedi in your youth. I think I fit into that demographic as well. And one of the scenes that really stayed in my mind from when I was a child, and it's just such a satisfying scene, is when the Ewoks are busy sort of smashing up the stormtroopers on Endor, and the two logs sort of come and boom, like that, and it just it's so satisfying because it just goes like that. And also because you had the toy, you could play that scene over and over again. It was brilliant.
I love it.
And the bit when the logs roll down and it trips over the walker.
That's another
Look at that weird wobbly kind of-
Yeah, it's right, and it's just brilliant, that whole scene, the way that how small furry people and Chewbacca kind of team up.
Right.
So, it's just really fun.
Right.
That's
And you're up here with two furry people, so that's good.
Oh, it's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Daz, don't hide back there, buddy. You got to come ask a question too.
Hi, my name is Georgie from the UK, and this is also my first celebration. So I don't relate as much to kind of like everything with the original trilogy because I wasn't actually introduced to Star Wars until the sequel trilogy, so I was very late.
Wait,
compared-
sequel trilogy?
Oh,
or prequel?
Rey, so
Sequel,
episode 7.
yeah, amazing.
Sorry. So episode 7 and onwards, like around 2015, when we started to see all the marketing with like Finn and Kylo Ren, and then Daisy comes out of nowhere, and it's like Rey with everything in there. For me, Rey is a really important character, and I love her to bits. And I suppose the question I wanted to ask is, how did you kind of navigate, like, I know you explained earlier, but like, how did you kind of navigate with writing this story about her parents that you did in Shadow of the Sith, with just the scenes that you had to go off, and then obviously what was given to you as a brief for the book?
Yeah, there's a lot of working backwards from the Rise of Skywalker. One of the biggest questions I had was why did Rey recognize Ochi's ship on the bluff on Pisana as being the ship that took off from Jakku? Because why was that ship leaving Jakku if that was Ochi's ship and Ochi is looking for Rey? So things like that. That movie is full of these kind of circular oddities that I had to kind of straighten out. But first and foremost, like Rey is like my most favorite character, and I knew that her parents were the main characters of the book. Like it's a Luke and Lando book, but they're only half the story, and I really wanted to make sure that Rey was represented. Like, okay, she's 6 years old, and there's a limit to what a 6-year-old can take part in a story, but it had to have that connection to the sequel trilogy. It's really interesting you say sequel because, like, what we forget, we're like OT people, original trilogy. We forget that there was a huge new resurgence of fandom with the prequels in '99. You know, I've got good friends who they came into the prequels. We kind of forget that.
Yeah.
And now, of course, there's fans come in with the sequel trilogy, which is the magic of Star Wars, because nothing brings me more joy than seeing like little kids dressed up as Rey at conventions and things, because like this is a new generation coming into Star Wars, which is the magic of Star Wars. Star Wars is for everybody, and it covers, I mean, you know, Return of the Jedi is 40 years old, and The Rise of Skywalker is like, what, 5 years old now? Something like that? Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, so like the range of ages and generations is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for like.
Thank you as well.
Yeah.
You must have been thrilled seeing Daisy Ridley today.
I unfortunately wasn't on the panel.
But you heard.
Yeah,
Yes.
I heard about it, and my mind was blown with it, and I was gutted that I missed it. But
Yeah.
I was ecstatic to hear about that film. Like, that's just, we're only on day one, and that's just
It's like-
made my event already.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I'm hoping this is like crazy because the film is not going to be for a long time, obviously.
Right.
Like, would there be a flashback with Miramir and Jodie Comer? Would they
be
do
cool.
that on Hypercon?
Hey,
That
you
would
should be an extra.
Someone needs to give Daisy my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do that.
I mean,
We'll try.
we've got a guy on this panel right here. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe. You know?
When she listens, she'll probably like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, I am Chris from Manchester.
Yes.
Myself and my son, our favourite sequence from Return of the Jedi is probably the whole Jabba's palace sequence. But from guys that remember it first time round, did you have a theory as to why Jabba was a human in 1977 and then it suddenly turned into a giant slug by the time Return of the Jedi came around?
Well, it's like he's not in, because he doesn't appear as the human in the...
No, he's in the comic.
He's in the comic,
a couple
yeah,
panels.
he's in the comic.
But I always just thought he drank a lot of gravy. No, I never thought about it because I just thought, oh, they must have changed their mind about how he looked. What about you?
Maybe just all his greed and his avarice has made him into this horrific space worm.
He really is. He really is like the perfect embodiment of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you map it out and you look at the filter through all the lens of, gluttony, obviously that's there, and greed. I mean, it's all there. And if you look at it through that lens, it's pretty metaphorical, pretty interesting.
He's also like one of the first examples where this amazing Star Wars thing where you can take like a normal word and make it into something weird. So like Jabba the Hutt, as a 7-year-old, I'm like, well, Hutt is like a Pizza Hut. That's like a building. But we continue that. Like, I remember is it The Force Awakens in the movies when there's Han is transporting the Rathgars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the Raiders come on, and the guy, he says, tell that to Kanja Club.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, what the heck is Kanja Club?
Yeah, and then Brian Young went crazy, yeah.
Yeah, but I love that. And, Emphas Nest, and like, I tried to do it in Shadow of the Sith as well. But yeah, I mean, the Jabba sequence, I think, when we watched it originally, it's like 20 minutes
Long,
of,
40 minutes. It's
really, yeah.
It's a significant part of that movie.
I remember wanting to get back to Vader and the Imperials, because you have that scene at the beginning, and then that's it which is really interesting the way they decided to tell the story.
Right.
Jabba's Palace, though, I mean, come on.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. It's a highlight. It's an absolute highlight.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much.
Amazing.
Hello.
Hello. So this is also my first celebration from the UK, and my favourite Return of the Jedi moment wasn't really much of one as a kid, but as I grew older, felt like it was more important to the whole story of Star Wars, was when Palpatine has Luke on the ground and is trying to kill him with Force lightning. You can see Vader, his indecision, looking left to right between the two, and it's Anakin warring with himself. That's a really powerful moment for me, and I really enjoy that every single time. It's up there with all of the moments from that film.
Do you agree, like every time you watch it, even though you know fully well, you still get angsty?
Yeah,
It seems to take forever.
It does, yeah, and I'm just like, come on, like I know how it's gonna end, but just become Anakin again. Like, please, you've been Vader for so long.
You must have watched the Kenobi TV series.
Oh, straight away.
Like, do you think that changed the way that you see Vader? Because for me, that was the first time where I could link Anakin and Vader as one person together, the way they kind of blended.
Agreed.
And then that scene in Return of the Jedi, thinking back now that we've seen it, Obi-Wan Kenobi, like you can imagine it's Anakin under the mask.
And I think just like any incredibly bad habit that you've built for such a drastically long time, you can snap out of it briefly, but those habits are hard to die, so you just easy to fall back right into the devil you know.
Yeah.
So it works from that perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's really good use of the lighting as well, with the,
Yes.
the purple
Oh,
and
it's
the blue and
amazing.
red, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly, they do.
Yeah.
But my question as well was with Return of the Jedi, with what you were saying about Luke dressed up in black and you were in awe, did you ever worry, despite the title, that maybe Luke would actually give in at any point?
Did anyone worry that Luke was going to give in, turn to the dark side? Really?
From the promo photo.
Well, yeah, you see, I'm a bit too young. Like, I don't have any memory of Revenge of the Jedi, the original poster and things. That has completely passed me by because I was too young. I didn't read Starlog or whatever because I was only like 6. He was always the hero.
Right.
and it was never going to turn.
Yeah, same. I thought
Yeah.
it was really altruistic, but I just thought, no, wait, it's Luke Skywalker. He looks cool in all black. He's awesome. There's no way. It never crossed my mind. It really didn't. Now, as older I might, because I'd see that black, and my English teacher hat would come up like, what's going on?
Well, also because like he's got the bionic hand,
Yeah.
like Vader.
Yeah, it's like, you
yeah.
can be more like your dad. Yeah.
Nah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, it's great. He's not as tall as his dad. He didn't get that gene either. That's good. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we're about to wrap up, but before we do, I got to get a selfie with all of you. Okay, so I think you've all positioned yourselves quite beautifully, so thank you for that. But I got to do that. All right, ready? I don't think this will work. Let's see. Yeah, ready, everybody? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Wow, that was great. That was very quiet.
Maybe I should. If we've got time, I'll do one too.
Yeah.
Because like, let's get a record. We'll both get it.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you so much, everybody, again, for coming to the Coffee with Kenobi podcast stage. You can find Adam Christopher throughout the celebration, signing copies of his book.
Yeah, and speaking of Return of the Jedi, I'm not allowed to say. Oh, I'm not allowed to say. Okay. Forget I said.
Never mind.
That you should come to the Lucasfilm Books panel
That'd be
on
fun.
Sunday at 5:30.
That'd be fun.
On the Twin Sun
I
stage.
think I will.
Yeah, but like you didn't hear that from me at all.
No, I don't remember. So anyway.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
This is not the panel you're looking for. Or maybe it is. So again, you can find Coffee with Kenobi wherever you can find podcasts, whether it's Google, Apple. We're on YouTube. You can catch the live show every Tuesday night. We've got social media presence on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So be sure to follow us along. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and have a great, wonderful rest of Star Wars Celebration. Thank you, Adam. And I also want a special round of applause just for Adam, because he's amazing.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.